Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I welcome you all to an introductory video about our new online Arabic program that inshallah we will be launching soon. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Let's get on with the agenda for today's video. First thing, I'll talk about myself a little bit, and then I'll give you a background about our online Arabic program, and then what this new program is going to be, why it is different. And Alhamdulillah, we have learned a lot in the last 10 years, and we want to come up with this new way of teaching, which is very innovative. So we'll talk about our teaching method, and then an important part of this video will be why should you learn Arabic. I know a lot of my students, and generally students get started very, they're very motivated in the beginning, but then eventually as they go on with the class, when they, as I say, when the going gets tough, they just drop off. And so I want my students to have clarity in why they are actually wanting to learn this language, what is their motivation. And so I will spend a little bit time about why should you learn Arabic, and then some misconceptions. I'll address some of those, and I'll talk about who this program is for, and finally the registration and some QA. Okay, a little bit about myself. I started learning the Arabic language, or at least I attempted to start learning the language even before the Google and the YouTube era. So there were not that many resources. The only resources we had were some cassettes, and most of you don't even know what a cassette is. So, and then CDs and books. But I tried about 4 or 5 years, and I could not really make progress over there because it is extremely challenging with almost no resources. Doing self learning is not an easy thing. But my desire uh, and the fire that I had in me to learn the Arabic language never died off, because I knew that the only way I can understand my deen is to the Quran, and the only way I can understand the Quran the correct way is by understanding the language itself. So I kept trying, and then eventually Allah answered my dua. And in 2003, I started learning the Arabic language with a couple of Arabic teachers from Egypt. It was almost like about 5 to 6 years I spent time with them. They were almost, except the first 3 months, the entire 5 or 6 years was all one on one. So at some point I was learning conversation, I was learning tajweed, I was having two other classes to learn the Arabic language. So I spent a lot of time during those 5 or 6 years. And after I finished with the teachers, some of my friends approached me asking, can I, teach them? And so that's how I started this journey of teaching for almost now. I've been teaching for about 10, 12 years. And then, just as a side note, I can speak about 7 languages, which gives me an edge as to how languages work. And Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, I think we have figured out a very, very effective way. Inshallah, just hang in there and I'll walk you through our methodology. So, on the background, as I mentioned, I was talking to some of the potential students about this new methodology, and they wanted me to do an introduction video, and that's why we are here. And the idea is that this video is supposed to give everyone, not only now, even in the next year when we open up for enrollments, an opportunity to know what this program is about, and then they can decide if they want to join, and then we will screen if they are the right students for the course, inshallah. My own teaching experience, as I mentioned, for the last 10 years, we have evolved over a few different phases. I would say maybe phase one, phase two, and then we are in the phase three right now. I personally learned Al Kitabul Asasi from my teachers, and then as I mentioned over here, it took for myself, about 5 years. Add to that some conversation and touch with classes, but then as you know, naturally, when I started teaching, I would teach the same thing that I learned. So I started using the book Al Kitabul Asasi. With, I think, in the first 4 or 5 years, it's really one of the best resources that's available to learn the Arabic language. Even to this day, even though uh, excuse me, even though it is something that was published almost 40 or 50 years back, it's still very, very good. The only problem with that book is that it's focused around students who travel overseas. For them, the book was really a good. I think, in my opinion, that would be a very, very good book even to this day. For students who are in over here in the Western world, there is a problem to really stick with that book, which is especially the volume two of that series, um, focused a lot around the social conditions in the Arab world, the economic conditions, the governments, some of the history. And so, for students who are trying to learn the Arabic language solely for the purpose of understanding the Quran, it becomes very, very difficult to hold on to that book and motivation for a long time. So I knew that at that point I really wanted to change my method, and I wanted to, I wanted to still keep, because the material, that at least the language and the grammar material, that the approach that this book takes is still very, very effective, and so I wanted to keep that, um, the material and the sequence of things, how it's laid out. However, I wanted to change the actual material of it, like the lessons, taking more, bringing it more closer to students. And so, thinking about it, I thought how we learn our second language, right? Back home, when we learned English, for example, we never learned about the grammar rules early in the game, right? We were reading, the teachers would correct, and then they would go back and forth, and we spent almost 3, 4, 7 years just, you know, reading and, listening. And it's only later on is that when we, start to learn in-depth grammar rules. And I said, okay, that's something that was very, very effective. And so I built a curriculum, and that would be the phase two of this program, where I call that program as Arabic through stories. And so the idea behind this was that I would have at least 200 to 300 stories doing this entire course, and then divide my grammar rules around those stories. So students, they get, it's engaging, it's interesting, it's simple, they can connect. And so they are reading these different stories, whether it's from, a little bit from history, a little bit from the Quran, and the general stories for children kind of thing. So it was a very effective way of teaching. And I I had at least 3 or 4 batches graduate from this phase. And I can tell you that they have held on to what they learned. So much so that, one of, those who've been following us, they know that, I started teaching on YouTube with my son, who was about 6 years old, then 6 or 7 years old, and then he joined this program, and then he's, about 15 or 14 when he finished his course. And he could tell, this is one of the things that I would go at, by the time you finish the course, this is one of the 100 patterns, possible patterns for any given word. And I would not emphasize anyone to memorize this one. The way I teach is that by the time they finish the course, I would give them any word, and without memorizing it, my son, he would say any. Not only my son, but anyone. Most of my students can tell which pattern it is, and they can give the whole pattern without memorizing it. So I feel very, grateful that, we were able to do this program. However, there was still one inherent problem in this, which is it took about 4 years. And Alhamdulillah, a lot of my students, uh, they stuck with me for a long time. But I know that, to benefit more students, I need to reduce the time, because to have that kind of commitment is very difficult. So if I can have the program reduced to about a year, or around a year, then I could have more students, and they would benefit from this. That's the idea behind the next phase of this one. So the whole objective is, how can I get that 20% of the language that will help students to understand 80% of the Quran, and in fact 80% of the language. And so after all these years of observation and thinking and pondering, I also come from a professional educational background, and so I know that there's a lot that we could do to improve this whole time thing where we can reduce this to a year. So, and that's the phase three, which we are calling Tanween. And the idea behind this is to let students learn the language naturally. And how do they learn naturally? By listening, by the sounds, right? So one of the most critical thing about language is that it is all dependent on the sounds and what you hear. Even as children, when we grow up, when we learn our own languages, we don't learn through rules, we don't learn through writing, we don't learn through watching, but we learn through listening. So in other words, when your parents say something and you repeat it, you make a mistake, they correct it, and then you learn it, and then you continue, and that's how you learn the language. And so this whole next phase of our program is dependent on listening skills. Not when I say listening skills, it's about every aspect of the grammar, every aspect of the Quran, every aspect of the language is all based on listening. So if you are able to hear and think about what you heard, then Alhamdulillah, you will be very 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 successful in this program. Also, just as a side note, the whole fatha, the kasra, the dhamma, the sukun, or shadda, even the dots were not there in the beginning, and the Arabs just knew it. Like they didn't know all these rules. They didn't know anything about, even forget about rules, writing or reading. Right? They would hear, and not only for the Quran, even for the language, they would hear and they would learn. And so this whole program is based on that aspect of learning, where I would emphasize, I would ask you to listen to certain sounds, how a word would start, how a word would end. What does what does a certain sound mean? The teaching method. So we want to get our students to the 20% of the language as soon as possible, and then let them enjoy the language, the Quran, and inshallah, all the aspects of the Arabic language. And we emphasize, I tell my students that there should be no memorization. Yes, you would need certain vocabulary for sure, but beyond that, you would not be memorizing, for example, whether it's charts like this one or this one. This is only for reference. So throughout the course, you will be given a chart like this, and then you would have to keep it in the front. And I say, yeah, I would ask you a question, and then I would. There are patterns over here. I don't know if you can see on the screen. There are color coded. So helping students to say, okay. It's really, you only need to know the two columns, and everything else there is a pattern. Everything else is just, you change your letter, it becomes something else altogether. And so over a period of a year, I keep asking and helping them identify it, and so it becomes part of them. So in other words, we do not want any of our students to memorize any of the tables, period. Okay. And Alhamdulillah, we also, as I said, we want you to listen more and see less. Imagine you are blind. How would you learn this language? Imagine I'm teaching to a bunch of students who cannot see. That's the approach. That's the mentality I would come in. Okay, I know my students cannot see, they can only hear. How can I make it possible for them to learn the language? So, and then I have built some unique drills, and those also, when you join the class, inshallah, you will see there are drills that are built specifically for the Arabic language. We also will be breaking away from the traditional approach. What do I mean by that? Traditionally, when you learn the Arabic language, especially the Arabic language, even when you go overseas or over here, teachers stick to a very strict order of content. So in other words, you would first deal with the vocabulary, of course, a little bit, but then you dive into the syntax, which is basically an-nah wa sarf. Some of these technical words, don't worry if you don't understand it. All this will become clearer. Just try to understand the gist of what I'm trying to say. So the syntax is the an-nahu was sarf, right? So they don't go to al-balagha, or they don't go to certain aspects of an-nahu until they finish up with a sarf. And they don't go into, for example, al-balagha itself has three or four different aspects of it. don't worry about what al balagha means right now. It means all about how you understand the meaning of the words, the phrases, the context. There's a meaning, and then there's a meaning of meanings, right? So um, for the reason why we are going to break away from this approach, not that there's actually a very good reason why teachers follow this order, but we don't have to follow this order strictly, because when you do this very strict order, what happens is you don't get to enjoy the Arabic language, or you don't get to enjoy the Quran, because when you ask a question, okay, this comes later on. No, there are a lot of things that you can learn ahead. Like there are aspects of an-nahu which you can learn during as-sarf. There are aspects of al-balagha that you can learn probably in the third lesson, or the fourth lesson, right? So it's my job to point out those things and say, okay, notice over here, this is an aspect of beyond the syntax, right? This is that there are certain meanings over here, and when you find these words, or when you find this in this sequence, it could mean something else. I may not give you the technical name of it, but I will definitely point you to that aspect of the language ahead, inshallah. How all of these is going to reduce the 4-year course into a 1-year course, obviously, right? Because if you're dealing with the same thing, so we're going to do a couple of changes. Our usual way is that when there is a reading session, we ask, or I ask students, if I don't take too many students in my classes. I have about 6 or 8 students max, and so I would ask each student to read, and depending on the speed, it could be a story of 1 page, and some student could take about 15 minutes, some could take 20 minutes, some could take 10 minutes, and so the entire class was just going off. I mean, we would lose an entire 2-hour class just on the reading. So we're going to change that and say everyone would still get a chance to learn, to read, but everyone will not read every lesson. One student would read one lesson, and the next lesson would be read by another student. And if I feel that there is a particular student who needs some help, then I would help the student offline, doing outside the class, or the student can reach out and say, okay, I need some help in reading, and we would help the student out in reading after the class, inshallah. That way we are not waiting, the entire class is not waiting while one person is reading the Quran or reading the text, inshallah. So that would save us at least 25% of the time, the class time. The second thing is the assignment grading. I wanted to make sure that everyone understood, and I wanted someone else to benefit from others if they make a mistake. But then I'm going to get away from that approach and say doing the assignments is your headache. It's your problem. You are paying for this, you are investing time, you're investing money, and so you have to do the assignment. It would all be online. I would still check it, I would still grade it. There's some automatic grading, but we will not be doing the assignment grading in the class. And so that means another 20% of time would be saved, because we have a lot of assignments, and so all those assignments will be moving into online, and so you can play and practice it. And if you do it, alhamdulillah. If you don't do it, then you're going to miss out on certain things. So, and the last thing is about writing, right? So we will not be doing any writing, especially in these days, everyone is online. But even with that, writing is not that hard. There's just a handful of rules, and then it needs a lot of practice that you have to do yourself. And so I have the materials, and if anyone is interested in doing the in practicing, I'm more than happy to share those resources, and they can have it checked by me. I will tell them, maybe for example, the letter qaf has to be written somehow differently in the middle. When it comes to the big end, it shows up slightly different. So there are just a few rules that I will point out, inshallah. And with all of these, and I think we can reduce the time from 4 years to a little over a year. Now, one important thing that I want to make sure that all the students who plan to join, I want them to come to this class with a clear motivation and hold on to that motivation for the entire duration of the course. I don't want them to, or some waswasa to talk them out of this class. And so, inshallah, to be able to do that, you really need to know why should you learn the Arabic language, right? I mean, if you don't really know clearly for sure why you should learn, then you will not be able to hold on. So in the next few slides, inshallah, I will walk you through some of the reasons why you should learn. Hopefully it'll motivate you guys and it'll help you to stay motivated to learn the Arabic language, whether here or anywhere else. Okay, it really doesn't matter. So the first thing is we need to remove some of the wrong reasons, or maybe this is the wrong place. If you want to be able to speak, as I mentioned, you will be, if you, I have some of my students who can speak, and that's not because of I pushed, I had some specific classes or specific drills in the class. I had some conversation drills, but most of the students took upon themselves to learn to be able to speak, and so they would ask me for help. I would speak with them in the Arabic language. They would go out in the community, they would try to speak with them in the Arabic language. And so there are certain things, so this, especially the speaking skill, has to be something that you work yourself on. I can only give you certain material, I can push you in a certain direction, but at the end of the day you have to do the speaking part, right? I cannot do the speaking part for you. And so this course is not meant for that, but you will be able to do that if you want to do that, because of some of the ways that I teach. Because as I said, it's all about sounds, which means that obviously you will be able to speak, but you will not be able to speak until you speak out. You have to open your mouth and say these words. And so inshallah, so that's one aspect of it. So if you really, if speaking is the only thing that you're looking for, then probably this is not the place. And then if you're traveling, I've heard some of my students in the beginning, they say, hey, I want to travel to Middle East, I want to learn. No, this is not the place. You're going to, if you're traveling to the Middle East, take that opportunity and learn there, not here. Okay. And often also happens is that parents reach out to me and say, hey, my son, I want you to teach the Arabic language. So I used to take a lot of these students, but then I think it is not fair for the students, not for the parents, because after 6 months they're not doing it. The parents are spending their time to bring them to the classes, and then they are spending money, and the students after 6 months they don't learn. It really hurts me. It's a lose lose situation for everyone. So I will not take any high school students because parents want them to be here. I will take them if the students want them. Like, anyone 13 and up can be part of this course, only if they themselves want to be part of this course. So it's a very important thing. Keep it very clean in your, clear in your mind, that we will not, take just because parents want their children to learn the Arabic language. The children themselves should want to learn the language. And of course, it sounds cool to learn the Arabic language. Yes, it does, but at the end of the day, that is not enough for you to carry on for too long. Okay, inshallah, because what we're going to learn, what you're going to learn, what we are going to teach is something that you can hold on, and so you need to be there for the entire course, inshallah. Okay. And some of the correct reasons are, of course, we all know that we want to be able to understand the Quran. And as Allah says in the Quran, that establish prayer to remember me, and the best way to remember Him is through the Quran. And so when you're praying, one of the best things that you can do yourself is that while praying, you want to understand the Quran, you want to have the khushu', then perfect, right? That's great reason. As far as I want to be able to follow the Quran in the Taraweeh, it's great, it's a good reason, but as I say, it's a very seasonal thing, right? So you start, you have this intention beginning of the Ramadan, and then when the Ramadan is over, you say, okay, I'm going to think about it next year, right? So it's really, you want to have very clear motivations in your mind why you want to learn this. Some other reasons why I hear my students say and people say is that translations are not correct. It's someone else's opinion. Translations are very boring. All these things are actually correct reasons, but you still need to question them. And so, because some of these things can be, your waswasa can debunk these things as things get tough. And so, I am going to ask those questions to make it clear, and to absolutely to make the whole thing crystal clear that these are the right reasons, but these are the proof for that. Okay. So inshallah, so in other words, why did I say that? Because as things get tough, you would start questioning, what, there's so many great scholars, they don't know the Arabic language, but they understand the Quran so well. Maybe just the Quran translations are okay. That's how you will talk yourselves out of this program. Or you would say, okay, now how wrong can the translations be, right? After all, we know that there's so many people who become Muslims or revert back to Islam purely based by reading the Quran. So you would start thinking, okay, maybe it's not after all that far off. And so inshallah, I will have an opportunity to show you how far off it is actually. Not that it's not beneficial. If you have no other means, alhamdulillah, that's a great way to start for non-Muslims. But you are a believer, you are a Muslim now, you have to learn the Arabic language. It is fard. As Umar radiallahu anhu said, it's fard to learn the Arabic language on every Muslim. And then there is this phenomena that's taking, I mean, it's been there probably for some time now, that learn the top 10 words or top 100 words, top 200 words. Wallahi, if learning the vocabulary is the end, then it's not going to benefit you, it's going to hurt you. But if you plan to learn the Arabic language and you want to learn the vocabulary, you know great, because vocabulary is very critical. You need to learn it, you need to know it. But that should not be the end of it. Okay, so if you are joining one of these programs and they're not taking you further into learning the language, then please, my humble request is, you're wasting your time, because the vocabulary is not enough, and I will show you objectively today with examples why it's not enough. Quranic vocabulary does not equal to having understanding of the Quran. Okay, so here is an example. People who know some of this vocabulary, darasa, means to study, right? He studied. um Now, so that's one word, and you don't know the grammar, you don't know the patterns, but you know the word darasa, and you say, okay, to study. But the word darasa and is one word, right? So I'll give you a few sentences over here. Darasa zaidun, durisa zaidun, darasa zaidan, darrasa zaidun, adrusu zaidan, darasa zaidun, darsu zaidin, zaidun darrasun. Notice all of these words, it's just the same word, darasa, but in different patterns. So if you don't know the patterns, if you know only the word darasa to study, then this is, you look at the way, just with two words, how wrong will you be if you just stick to the vocabulary, right? So the first one means Zaid studied. The second one means Zaid was studied, meaning someone else studied him. Darasa, darasa Zaidan. Here he means he studied Zaid. Same two words, just changing the pattern, right? So if you stick to the meaning, okay, I know the meaning of the word darasa, it means to study. That means all of these things. And if you try to apply the same meaning in all of these things, you will be completely wrong, right? This is just an example, very simple example to drive home the point, and you will find this over and over in the Quran, that the same word is used in a pattern that will change the meaning completely. And so just knowing the meaning will not help you over here, right? And you can see all the examples. I don't need to go over each of these. In other words, the Arabic language is built to be learned with the patterns. It is so deep that you will not be able to understand this language if you don't understand the patterns. Each pattern has a meaning, and so it's not just the word itself. So a lot of times you say, okay, this word means this much, means this, but actually the word means that, but then when you put that word in a certain pattern, it means something else completely. It can be the actual doer. It can be someone who the receiver of that action. In other words, it can be completely a different meaning. So you need to understand the patterns. Once you understand a handful of patterns, then you take any word. Okay, this is a word, this is a base meaning, this is the pattern meaning. You put them together, you come up with your own meaning. That's how the Arabic language is built. To do anything but that is to say, not only, like, basically you're not valuing the Arabic language. You're not valuing what Allah has sent, because unlike most languages, Arabic is divine. And when you learn the language, inshallah, with us, you will see it clearly, objectively, not subjectively, objectively, why Arabic is divine and why Allah chose Arabic for His Quran. Okay. And if you don't do this, then someone could say, okay, I'm going to learn the pattern, the whole pattern. It's like darasa means something, durisa means something, darrasa means something. At that point, you either have to learn, just for the Quran, not for the language, just for the Quran, probably about 30,000 words or 25,000 words. There are about 77,000 words, but even if you remove some of the duplicates and this and that, there are about 20 to 30,000 words that you need to learn. It's not the top 100 words, but it's the patterns. It's in Arabic language, the pattern and the word together give lots of other meanings. So you have to learn the Arabic language. Otherwise, you will not be able to benefit just from the vocabulary. Moving on, to understand Quran's linguistic beauty, you have to go beyond the vocabulary. What do I mean by that? Let's just imagine, for the sake of discussion, that let's take the first example that I have over here, right? أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين بالقسط شهداء لله. And the second ayah in Al-Ma'idah is the ayah number 8. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين لله شهداء بالقسط. Same words, exactly the same words. There's really, it's just the position has been changed. If vocabulary was enough, why would Allah do this where He's putting these words in different order? Because Allah is encouraging us to understand the language and go to the Quran and deal with the Quran, to do the tadabbur of the Quran. Okay, I understand this meaning, but why is the placement different? And you will not be able to understand the difference in placement if you don't understand the language, because both are the same meanings. So the only difference is the placement, and the placement is because of the grammar rules. So in other words, the placement gives you a different indication. As I mentioned, the 4 levels of the Arabic language, the placement denotes to certain aspects that you can only learn when you learn the language. Okay, so, and these are some examples. There are hundreds of these examples in the Quran where everything is same except the placement of certain words, which requires the language and not the vocabulary, because by vocabulary both mean same, right? So either we are saying, okay, Allah is trying to play with us, ma'adallah, we seek refuge from such words, that He's trying to trick with his words. No, Allah is giving that so we can spend some time with Him, with the Quran, and appreciate the beauty of the Quran, appreciate the miracle that the linguistic miracle that He's placed. Right? It's a linguistic miracle. Why do we say it's a linguistic miracle? Because it's text, and so to do anything other than that, just take some words and try understand, is not spending time in understanding the vocabulary, or the and then the Quran is not translatable. So you might have heard this from many different people, but they don't really go take it to the next level of proving it, right? So I come up with some simple examples, extremely simple examples, which most people can understand. And I will, with these examples, you can see yourselves that it's really not translatable. So let's look at these two examples. Qara'a Muhammadun al-Qur'ana. What does it mean? Everyone knows the meaning of the word qara'a. Sounds like Quran, right? Qara'a, Quran, reading. So qara'a means to read. So Muhammad read the Quran. And the next sentence is Muhammadun qara'a al-Qur'ana. Same. How do you do? It's different in Arabic, right? But how do you translate this into the English language? The first one you would say Muhammad read the Quran. The second one you would say Muhammad read the Quran. Wait a minute. Are they supposed to be different? Because in the Arabic language they are different, right? So you could say, oh, I can still say, Muhammad read the Quran. In the first one, I could say read Muhammad the Quran, but you don't speak like that. That's not the natural way to speak. In the Arabic language, there is a purpose, there is a reason. When you say Qara'a Muhammadun al-Quran, you're focusing on, we know who did the action. It's Muhammad, but what action did he do? Qara'a. In the second one, someone did the action of reading. Who was it? It's Muhammad. So they are addressing a whole different question. Each sentence addresses a different aspect, different question. But in the English language, it's so limited that both of them get translated to the same meaning. And so imagine if Allah is going out of his way to make one sentence, one way, the other one make the other one. The technical terms, I don't want to go into the technical terms over here. And we are saying, we are happy with this one. It's to me personally, this is my humble opinion. Not that with due respects to everyone, not trying to learn the Arabic language is in some ways insulting the Quran and insulting Allah. Okay, because He's chosen the language for a purpose that has all these intricacies, and we are happy with the translations. Of course, as I said, I can speak about 7 languages. Alhamdulillah. I know that some other languages back home, we can do something like this, but it is still not the first class citizen. Either you say in poetry, or when you say that, when you do the translation, it is not the normal way to speak, right? That there's a normal way to speak in all languages, but in the Arabic language, both these sentences are equal citizens. They have their own purpose. Moving on, there is the couple of ayat that I want to give why um, the you need to learn the language with a teacher, right? This aspect is when you try to learn yourself. An example is from Surah Al-Fatiha. We have ihdina sirat al-mustaqim. Over here, the word ihdina is, it requires us to use, if you go purely by the Arabic grammar, the word ila. Ihdina ila as-siratil mustaqim. But in the Quran, Allah doesn't use that. He breaks away from the norm. But the translations, you cannot do anything but use the word to or on or something like that. So, for example, show us the straight path. Again, show and ihdi is totally two different words. Ihdi is to guide, show us to show. Allah is not saying arina. So the first translation is off right from the bat, right? The second one is guide us to the straight way, show us the straight path. Again, show and guide, that are completely off. Direct us on to the straight way, keep us on the right path, guide us to the straight path. Wait a minute, the Arabic language, the ayah doesn't have ilah. What is Allah trying to tell us over here? When we make this dua, ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim. You cannot translate this. This like the translation. If I even try to do this, it would be guide us the path, the straight path. Guide us the straight path. What basically Allah is trying to do over here is He's teaching us. He's building the aqidah in us. We are saying, Allah, don't show us the straight path, don't guide us to the straight path, but make all our actions in our lives on the straight path always. Like, don't let there not be a distance. When you use the word ilah, there's a distance between us and the straight path. So the dua, by making this dua, by taking the word ilah from the ayah, Allah is teaching us that the dua and the attitude of the aqidah that we need to go in is that we don't want to have any distance between us and the straight path. We want everything that we do to be on the straight path. So it's so beautiful, and you will not. These are small words that when they are this happens only in the Arabic language. In my experience, this happens only in the Arabic language, where you will not see certain things, and especially in the Quran. So again, we have a similar example over here. I will not take too much time over here. So وَقُلْنَا يَا آدَمُ اسْكُنْ أَنْتَ وَزَوْجُكَ الْجَنَّةَ. Over here, if you look at all the translations, it says, you and your wife live or stay in the garden, in the paradise. But does Allah say fi over here? No. What does it mean? Allah is telling us that the entire, when Allah told Adam alayhi salam to live in the Jannah, or to stay in the Jannah, He basically said all of the Jannah is yours. It's not in the entire Jannah. That understanding, that connection, you will not be able to get, you will never be able to get it through the translation, any translation. Because you can explain this, as I'm explaining, someone can explain this. I'm not saying it's not possible to explain. Giving the meanings is one thing, and understanding and translating is a whole different thing, right? So all these translations we're talking about, if you have a tafsir, you're reading it, okay, alhamdulillah, that's a different aspect, that's a different story altogether. The other aspect is, not that we have to derive rules from the Quran based on our knowledge of the language. There are experts to do that. But from this, the scholars also derive the fact that this Jannah was created for Adam alayhi. To summarize everything, the number one reason is that Quran is a timeless linguistic miracle. It's a linguistic miracle. It's a linguistic miracle, meaning you can only know its miracles through language, and you can only feel connected and be in awe with the Quran, with Allah. You know, can experience His mercy only through the language of the Quran. You want to understand it? Yes, I'm not saying that you cannot understand anything from the translations. You certainly can understand, and you can use it. You should use it. But if you want to experience the Quran, if you want to experience Allah, if you want to communicate with Allah, then the language is the only way. Remember that Allah sent this Quran for us so we can feel Him, we can connect with Him. And He wants us to spend by, and as the examples that I gave you were, changing a letter over here, not having a word over there. What is He trying to say? He's saying, come, spend time with this and see what I have over here. And so, in my humble opinion, learning the language to understand the Quran is a pure and genuine demonstration of your love for Allah, and that you want to experience His mercy and His rahmah. And of course, the number two reason is, the translations are incomplete, they're not correct, and you want to understand and get guidance from the Quran. Absolutely, that's the top two reasons that you should learn the language. So I hope you guys have this clear motivation when you join, and you can hold on to that motivation. Now that you know the purpose of the language. I do hear questions as to, can I self-learn Arabic? There was a time when we didn't have resources, right? The argument is, we have so many resources today. Can I learn the Arabic language? So unfortunately, the pendulum has swung in the other direction. There were no resources. Now there are resources that you cannot even imagine, right? You just open up YouTube, any place, there are tons and tons of places and resources. Unfortunately, the problem is now there's so much that it's confusing. It's always confusing, but when you have more options, there's more confusion. And so students who don't know, who don't have a guide, they start up with something, they learn a little bit, they don't know if they're on the right track because they don't have a guide or a teacher to say, okay, you're on the right track, move on, just continue. They don't. So they move to the other one, they move to the other one, and they never learn the language, unfortunately. So they keep on trying with different things because they want to learn, but they don't have this time to spend, someone to say, okay, sit with them and go through this entire process of learning. So if you have a teacher who can spend with you, then that's the best thing that you can do. And these teachers or programs should have an objective, right? A lot of students, a lot of classes, they have 4 weeks classes, 5 weeks classes, 6 weeks classes, 10-day classes. But is that an objective driven course? Is that saying, okay, here is the objective, here is where my students should be at the end of this journey, and this takes 8 months, 9 months, a year, 2 years, and I'm going to walk them through this entire thing. If you don't have a course that walks through like that, that has an objective at the end, and then helping students to get to that objective, then in my opinion, you will be spending a lot of time without much success. Okay, we talked about why the Quranic vocabulary is not enough. We talked about why translations are not correct or complete. And then we say Arabic is tough, is another misconception. It's not tough, especially if you have a good teacher and if you are working with a teacher. It is really not tough. Wallahi, the Arabic language is made to be easy. Okay, I know when someone says it's tough because I've gone through that phase myself. I've had tears in my eyes, and I have had my teachers say, "Huwa ashalu shay fil alam." That is the easiest thing in the world, and I started crying more. What do you mean? I'm struggling over here? But the fact of the matter is that once you have a good teacher, and once you have go through a certain break point, and once you are over that hump, things become very, very easy. So until then, it seems like a little tough thing, but it is really not tough. I'm for, as I said, anyone who wants to understand the Quran, experience Allah, experience the Quran, experience its miracles, you should be learning the language. And the very important thing, this program is for people who make this as their number one priority. Why? Because without that, you will not be able to succeed. And the other important thing to keep in mind is that when I say number one priority, it means that everything in your life for the next year, quarter, year, and maybe another couple of months after that should be around this program. You have a plan, you have a marriage, you have this, you have an event, you have a birthday party, you're going for hunting, you're going for job. No matter what it is, you have to plan everything around this program. You have to make sure that, okay, I'm traveling, but from this time to this time, I've had students who are traveling, and then they plan it in such a way that they take a break in Starbucks or whatever, take a 2 hour break, attend the class, and then move on. I've had people who go to sacrifice for that Eidul Adha, and I've had all these animals in the background making noise, and I would ask them, what's the noise? And so they plan their day around that. So they would take an iPad into the farm, and then when it's time for the class, they would basically attend the class, and then they would go back. So it's only those students who have been very successful, gone on to teach, in fact. And so when I say number one priority, I hope it's very clear. It's not just, okay, this is one of the things, top priority. No, this is the number one priority in your life if you want to learn the Arabic language, because this is a great opportunity that you have right now. It's 1 year. I've reduced the time. I put everything in a very innovative way. Hopefully, Allah will give me the clarity in my speech and tawfiq for you guys to join and make things easy for both of us to learn the language, inshallah. Okay, another thing is that we're not going to teach you to memorize and learn the language, but we will focus on how you can acquire the language. The difference between learning the language and acquiring the language is, when you learn the language, you learn it, but you would forget after some time. When you acquire the language, you basically acquire it naturally. You keep it, so the retention is much longer, and especially if you continue to work with the Quran, then you will never lose it, inshallah. A little bit about the registration. It's a 1 year online program, and it's 2 hours a week, and it's going to be on. The first class is going to be on Saturday, 4th of May, 2024. It's 9:30 a.m. Central Time, and of course the tuition is there. It's a very limited number of seats. We have a very limited number of seats, probably about less than 10. And generally the program starts in January, but this is an off season because we're starting launching of for the first time, and the seats will be first come first served basis, and all registrations and enrollments must be completed by 30th of this month, April 30th, and then we'll have about 4 days to create your, to do the communication back and forth, create your accounts, and the entire program will be online. It'll be for 13 and up. All genders are welcome. And then all the course material will be online, and it'll be all online, no hybrid. If I live in Houston, so if anyone is interested at some point to meet in a mosque, in a place, and I'm open for it, because sometimes I love looking at the students and helping them out. But I'm open for that. But generally the idea is to keep it all online, and we would not change the time once it's fixed. Right now it's tentatively 9:30 a.m. But once we all agree, then we would continue stick with that time, and we will not change that time. So the prerequisites for the class, basically we will not be teaching the letters or reading. You don't have to have fluency in reading, but you should be able to at least read. And if you feel strongly that I can work on that, and I can, still want to join, totally fine, and we will help you offline on how to read. But we prefer that you be able to read. If you are 13 and below, probably it's going to be tough, because like the previous courses, we had 4 years, we had time. I can spend time with each uh, student on a personal level. But since we don't have time like that, 13 and above will be below will be tough. But if you have a parent with you, then 13 and above would be fine. Those are prerequisites. Really, there's really nothing big. Inshallah. So that will be the time that we will do from 9:30 a.m. Central, and I see that My niece actually, she's been wanting to learn the language for a long time. So she's joined from India as well right now, and for her, it will be probably about 8 o'clock in the morning or 8 p.m. In the night. So 1 year, it's 2 hours. So it's a 2 hours, 9:30 to 11:30 a.m. Okay, so there's a question about hybrid or all online. I do love in-person classes, but I feel that because of the time constraints, I'm planning this to be all online for now. But I live in Houston, and if I think that there will be people who will benefit from this, especially for reading and conversation, I will not hesitate from bringing in people, meeting in a local masjid or meeting at my home. Those things are open, but right now I want to say that this is going to be online. So I try not to do it. As I said, try if there's an emergency, then because I don't want, if they're 8 students, then I don't want them to be all impacted, right? Um, that's why I said you work your schedule around this class. But I understand there can be emergencies. When there's an emergency like that, then I will work with you guys on that course. The other thing that I forgot to mention is that, excuse me, everything is online. All your course material will be online. You can access your course material, your quizzes, your assignments, everything online during the course, after the course, all of that, inshallah. Good question. That's a great question. So I think personally, of course I'm a crazy person, right? So I used to spend 20 hours a week at some point in my during those 5 or 6 years, because it needed that kind of time and that kind of effort, and also because I had a limited time with my teacher. So I wanted to get everything possible, right? So I would study, I would read, I would study, and then I would say, okay, I didn't understand this part, all completely from a totally different book, not even from the book Al Kitabul Asasi, completely from a different book. I would study it, and then if I don't understand, I would go and ask my teacher. But I don't expect all students to be crazy like that. So I expect uh, in the beginning, just maybe first 3 months, maybe 2 hours outside the class. And so you can add maybe the next 3 months, maybe an additional 3 or 4 hours, because vocabulary takes a little bit of time. And then it becomes more and more, right? So you need some time to retain it and to revise it. So I would say maximum 4 hours per week, the peak of the course, like towards the end of the course, but in the beginning, at least 2 hours outside the class. All the information is there on our website. It's called as tanweenarabic.com. Tanweenarabic.com. You can go online, and the registration is open. Whoever feels still motivated, kindly finish your enrollments. Once you register, we will send you the details as to where the payment should be made, when the class should be made, all the other logistics. And then we want to finish the registrations and enrollments, everything by April 30th. So that'll give me 4 days to set up all your accounts and all of those things, and we will start on 4th. Yeah. Okay, great question. Why is it called Tanween? So I see that there are a couple of students, at least my students over here. When I say why Tanween, probably it'll click to them and it'll stay in their minds forever. For some of you who don't know, this is the secret of the Arabic language. And for a long time, I was wondering what should I name this program, because I thought about Arabic waves, Arabic sounds, Arabic this, that. But Allah opened up with this word tanween, because what tanween means, the literal meaning is to make noise, make sound, right? But it also is, the fathatan, the dhammatan, and the kasratan are also tanween. When you are learning the Arabic language, you know, always you want to look for a tanween. You understand the secret, all the doors will open up for you. Meaning, if you look for a tanween, and if the tanween is not there on the word, then there are a bunch of rules. You understand those bunch of rules, that's the entire Arabic language for you. So that's why it's called as tanween, because two reasons. One, it brings are three reasons. One is it's all about sounds, and Tanween means to bring something, something that brings to life. And the second reason is that is the secret for learning the Arabic language. If there's nothing else, as I said, go to our website, tanweenarabic.com, and try to complete your registrations. Once you register, probably in a day or two, we'll send you all the details through an email, inshallah. Okay, jazakallahu khairan kathiran. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.